Wonderful. Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Chatter. Today I'm here with Marina Purkiss, a political commentator and podcast host. Marina, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Josh.
You're actually only the second person I've ever met with the name Marina.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And the other Marina I know is actually also blonde and quite outspoken, and one of my favorite people in the world, actually. She's a bit of a badass.
There is Boris Johnson's ex-wife as well, was Marina Wheeler. Whole thing.
Which ex is this? Like XX or like XXX?
He was hard to keep on top of it. The one he was married to, who my understanding is that he cheated on her with Carrie Simmons when she was battling cancer, is my understanding.
It's that one?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, my thoughts go out to her.
Yeah.
Although, maybe dodged a bullet.
I don't think she dodged it. She was married to it for a while.
Okay, well, she removed the shrapnel. I don't know.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. So it says, or you've said that you were woken up to politics in about 2016. Like, what happened?
Well, what did happen, Josh, in 2016? It was pretty monumental. It was basically Brexit. It was the referendum. And I was largely apolitical before then. I think, like most people, I was just getting on with my life. Politics was something that happened on the news, and I didn't care for it. Wasn't interested. I found it dull. It wasn't for people like me. And then basically I remember waking up in the morning. My husband said, "Have you seen which way it's gone?" I was like, "What?" He said, "We voted out," and something just felt like something just wasn't right. And then basically since then I sort of went on a bit of a journey of like understanding how the result happened and learning about what was allowed to go out there in terms of the vote leave, the leave.eu propaganda, basically lies, how actually exposed how vulnerable our democracy is to bad players, basically. And also the reason it felt so wrong is because my mum and dad are Sicilian, born and bred. They came over here in their 20s. So about 40 years ago, although you wouldn't think it because they sound like they arrived yesterday. In fact, I think their accents are getting stronger. My mum is like misusing he and she now. I'm like, Mum, are you regressing? Like, what's happening here? So I think for me as well, knowing that my parents now wouldn't be able to make it in the way they did because my dad was a gardener, he was a waiter at the Ritz and Claridge's, he was a hospital night porter. They wouldn't have made it in now because of the new points-based whatever system that Priti Portland Patel has introduced. So it just felt really wrong. And so, I basically started falling down rabbit holes, found the whole thing utterly fascinating. And also, as we've seen since 2016, things have just got worse. So for me, it is deeply interesting, deeply worrying, but I find it so, in a weird way, it's so thrilling to follow. So that's why I am now very much involved.
Well, it's the curse of interesting times, isn't it? We get to see the maddest shit that you would ever imagine unfold. Like I'd love to go back and try to tell people in the 90s because I don't know, there'd be like a 3-week scandal if some minister had been seen, out with, the wrong person. That would be weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. Or say, I remember there was a lot of controversy around Mo Mowlam getting thrown out of Blair's shadow cabinet just because she simply didn't agree with the direction it was going. She was kind of outspoken, and that was scandalous. And now that's just that wouldn't even make the. That wouldn't even make the, page 8 or page 10 or page 12 of the papers. It would never trend, But
that's part of the strategy. So that is part of, so Steve Bannon, who was a big player in terms of Donald Trump's campaign, his strategy, and it is one that works, is flood the zone with shit. Because, and Boris Johnson has openly, in a TV interview before he actually took the premiership, he alluded to this. He said, my strategy will be, I'll put out so many gaffes, but basically there'll be so much scandal, so many stories that people won't be able to keep up. And it's true. And what's also happened is we've now got a really high tolerance for scandal. It's like we know, just look at where we are now. we can't keep up with we're still digesting the last lie or the last scandal, and the next scandal's already unfolding. So we don't know where to focus our efforts. So it does work as a strategy, sadly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still pissed about the amount of money we gave to friends of Conservative Party
So am I.
members of Parliament during the pandemic. I can't believe that we're just accepting it.
There's such a small cohort of people who are repeatedly making shitloads of money, and they are cronies. It'll be through test and trace contracts, it'll be through the VIP lane contracts with PPE, and now the very same people, by the way, are going to be that very teeny tiny cohort that are going to be cleaning up with regards to tax breaks.
Yeah, they will. Yeah, the tax breaks, that is honestly like, it's amazing to me to watch them do this. It's like children. They have like zero. It's not even that like just ideologically I don't agree with them, because I don't. Like, you know, the trickle down stuff has never ever worked really. But they're just like fumbling around. And I was talking to that guy David Edgerton recently about this. He's like, why do you think the caliber of people who end up in these positions of power is so dismal? Like what is going on? Like, where's the talent? It's just, we're not a country who's lacking in great universities, or just, we're a well-developed nation with, I'm sure, loads and loads of talented, like smart, like shrewd people. And where the fuck are none of them running the country?
Great question, Josh. There's a whole book on this, which is Why Do We Get the Wrong Politicians, I think it's called.
Love it.
But it's if you look at who's drawn into the world of politics, and you look at the conveyor belt from public schools, Oxford, Cambridge, into our politics. I made the mistake when I was younger of thinking, oh, people going to politics must be really good people, because they want to they want to work for the society, they want to work to improve the lives of people, and blah, whereas that didn't really interest me. Whereas now, and I literally only again since 2016 in my awakening, have I realised people that get into politics do so because it is an opportunity to raid the public purse, to shape policy to benefit you and your ilk or your rich friends, and to become sort of such a coveted individual that all these big companies want to slice the action. They want a slice of you because they know you can impact policy. So you'll hear about people like Jacob Rees-Mogg receiving funding from fossil fuel companies, or Liz Truss, or whatever, other people getting money from oil companies or whatever, I don't know. But it's a massive money-making scheme. And this is why, sadly, we get the wrong people. Also, if you think about it, to get into politics, you have to, a lot of people, it's quite risky in terms of money. Like, there's a lot of time required for you to go into politics and do canvassing, get support, etc. And to do that alongside a main job. A lot of people don't have that, they haven't got that capability of doing that. They're too busy trying to just make ends meet.
Yeah, it is. It's like it's a position of the privileged, like
Absolutely.
the ones who have the time.
Yeah, it's
really.
like interns. People, some like the wealthy kids can afford to take interns and build their way up in a company, like in showbiz or whatever. But the deprived kids or the less privileged kids can't do that because they need to actually make money to like maybe help mum and dad or whatever. So yeah, it's the same for politics.
So like a lot of people seem to think that the solution to this like absolute obscene raiding of the public purse, which I think you've like correctly identified, like that is what it is. It is just looting.
Yeah.
It disgusts me that we're not more outraged about this. But a lot of people seem to think that the panacea is just to not have the Tories in power. And I don't believe that to be the case at all anymore. I'm not convinced that Kier Starmer and I'm not going to say Blairite because I don't think they're all Blairites, but like the sort of more right-wing side of the Labour Party will be very happy to continue with public-private partnerships, things like PFI contracts, like massive amounts of outsourcing. Like I don't see anything changing. Maybe some things, like obviously they've suggested a few policies that would be great. I'm not convinced they'll actually do them, like the first past the post PR thing, which I'm sure we'll get to. But like, do you think that there's hope in electing a Kier Starmer's Labour Party that they would like actually fix these problems.
Okay, so Josh, what you've got to look at here is what are our options as voters or people that cannot take any more of what has become the Tory party and our government. What are our options? We either keep the Tories in power and they keep destroying everything, and I'm not going to list it all. Everyone knows what's being destroyed. Everyone knows about the gaps in inequality. Or we do something else. And what are our options at the moment? And I hate this. I hate that it's a two-party system. I hate that it's basically you've got to vote Labour or you've got to tactically vote. I want there to be. This is why I'm so hopeful. I really want proportional representation to come in. It's because I want people to be able to vote for the party they actually trust to deliver what they want. But we aren't there. We've got this first past the post system, so it's Labour or it's the Tories. Now, I hate, well, for me, a trigger statement that comes from people like my brother-in-law on holiday. They're all as bad as each other.
I mean, I couldn't quite say that.
Okay, but there's a lot of that, and that is by design because it leads to apathy, which leads to people not voting. And it's actually the non-voters that would swing everything. So I just think, look, Labour have not filled me with confidence. I love the pledges that came out when Kier Starmer was going for the Labour leadership. I thought there were some awesome pledges there. That
they abandoned.
So many. And that to me has really, because I joined the Labour Party and then I cancelled my membership. I will still lend them my vote. I will lend my vote to anyone that I need to. I implore people to vote tactically within their constituency to lend their vote to the party that's most likely to de-seat the Tory. For me, it is going to be Labour. But am I hopeful that they are going to deliver on everything? No. But they are not going to be as bad as the Tories. They are not going to crash the economy. They are not going to continue the same vein of corruption that we're seeing. And I just think that even if it is a 5% improvement on where we are, that is the direction you need to take. We're not going to get the dream here. We're not going to get our ideology, whatever that is, but we just need to go a step in the right direction. And also don't forget, Kier Starmer is one man. He is not the entire Labour Party. And I honestly think that there'll be enough of us lobbying and campaigning for things that if he does get into power, we're not sitting back. He's going to hear from loads of us, for example, on proportional representation, if he doesn't deliver that, especially now it's been backed as a motion at the Labour conference. So I just think, guys, we have two options. We carry on with the Tories or we go for Labour, and it's a step. It might even feel like a tiny step, but in the right direction. And then we go from there.
What would you say the arguments that because of the similarity in ideology of a lot of the people who are now stacking like both of the front benches of both parties, that the options are so similar that just to accept that, okay, we're going to get another neoliberal government is just furthering the continuation of this system? Like, I would be of the mind that the only way to break the two-party system is to stop voting for those two parties and like just walk away from both of them, because I don't see any signs that the Labour leadership are willing to listen to the membership. Like, they've gone from, I believe it's from 695,000 members maximum under Jeremy Corbyn at I think 2018, 2019 to about estimated, I saw 200,000, which means they've lost nearly 500,000 voters, of members who will go out and canvass for them because they no longer feel that party is representing them. Like, do you see, or do you think that there's like something in the argument that we have to like walk away? Like, if they don't represent the thing that we want, or if no party represents that. Okay, here's a question
back to you. What happens when you walk away, Josh?
Well,
you see, I know it's shit. I feel for people that feel politically homeless, and I get it. But if you walk away out of principle, of commitment to your ideology, however right you might be, however principled that is, what happens?
Well, I am of the opinion that both major parties have kind of abandoned their base over the last couple of years. And I feel like most crises result in some new party emerging. However, I feel like we haven't seen who that is. But I feel like there's something out there, right? Some sensible person. This is so pipe dreamy. That there's some sensible person who has the wherewithal to like see what the Tories are either missing and losing people, or the voters that they're hoovering up from UKIP and from the Labour Party. Because I don't think those people are economically right-wing at all.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's a massive, portion
I'm going to push you on
begging
this, right?
to be
I'm going
like
to push you on this.
represented. Yeah,
We've got 2 years, right, until the next election, and you can't, with all respect, you can't name what this thing is.
No,
it doesn't exist.
No.
So I'm going to tell you what happens if you walk away. We just get more Tory government. And again, I agree. There is too much. There is a lot of similarity between the Labour Party and the Tory Party. There are also lots of things that they aren't similar on, and they have talked about, and whether they provide it or not, I don't know. But again, at least they're talking about it. They're talking about things like renationalising the railways, about proportional representation, whether Starmer backs it or not, about bringing in a national living wage. There are other bits and pieces like Gordon Brown's leaked document, which I thought was, if that could go through, in terms of giving the Electoral Commission more power again, so that there's none of this dodgy electioneering, getting rid of the House of Lords. Like, even if one of those things is delivered, that is an improvement on where we are. So for me, for example, why do I hate how this government is trashing the economy, how it's making people's lives hell, it's making things worse for our most vulnerable people. For me, if you are a true socialist, and I hope people understand that word and they don't mix it with communism or Marxism or whatever, and you just want things to be a little bit fairer, and by the way, socialism can work alongside capitalism. I've got nothing wrong with that. I don't mind that. That's good, all good. Then for me, it is anti. You are denying the socialist movement when you don't vote. It's not helping anyone. It might be a very principled stance and make you feel good because I can't bear to vote for Labour, but it's not helping anyone.
Like, okay, so the problem I have with this argument is that, okay, right, Kier Starmer comes in and he does a couple of the things that you said, right? They renationalise the railways and they abolish the House of Lords, right? They don't tackle the fundamental underlying problems in the City of London, in the financialisation of our economy, because they're taking massive amounts of money from them. I don't see them reversing a lot of the privatisation in the NHS, again, donors. And I don't see them broadly solving the problems that have caused so much wealth inequality and income inequality in this country that has led to probably, I'd say, some of the extreme polarization that's happened, and mainly and led to people, I guess, 14 million people are living below the poverty line in Britain, something like that. I don't see that being the underlying causes of that being properly addressed. I see the Tories then saying, look, they didn't fix anything, and then 5 years down the line, of course. But then if the underlying problems aren't fixed, then we end up in the same position with another Tory government. And that, you can say that, okay, then we get a Tory government. But it always leads back down that road with the same situation unless we actually solve the underlying problems.
I also am hopeful that once they're in power, I actually think at the moment they're having to toe a very tight line, because if they reveal too much of their hand and what they're planning to do, people will jump on it like they did with Corbyn and be like, oh God, how much is this going to cost, blah, blah, blah. So I think Starmer, again, this is my hope, is that he is a bit like his Brexit stance, right? We know in his heart of hearts he thinks Brexit's a pile of shit, but he cannot say what he really thinks there, because the Conservatives will jump on him and the right-wing press will jump on him and be, he's going to reverse Brexit, he's going to deny the vote of the will of the people. So he's not. He's having to basically say make Brexit work, which we all know is a crock of shit, but the game he's playing. That's what I hope he is doing with regards to all of the things you're talking about. I think he's not wanting to rock the boat, and I really hope, bearing in mind the pledges, I really hope that he knows that's why he was voted in as a leader. And if and when he gets to power, that's what he goes back to. And it's a real shame that that's what you've got to do to get into power. You've basically got to lie or mislead or withhold. But I do think give them a chance, because we've had 12 years of Tory rule. We've given them every bloody chance. Give Labour a chance. And then if they're shit, then we tackle it. But we can't. We've got two options at the moment, Josh.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I mean, we'll see how it all plays out. I mean, but...
I feel like you're not going to vote though, are you?
I don't know who I vote for. This is my problem. Like, I used to have someone I would vote for in Jeremy Corbyn's Labour. And the fact that he still has had the whip removed. Right. Like, and I'm not even like super duper, like, someone's, like, friends of mine, like, asked me kind of recently. They were like, why do you love Jeremy Corbyn? And I was like, right, what percentage of politicians in the House of Commons do you reckon are bought and paid for?
Shitloads.
What, like 90%? Maybe a little less, maybe a little more.
Well, it depends on what side of the house you're talking about. Obviously, on the Tory side, pretty much all of them are sponsored by someone.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about on the other side. I know that it goes that way, but it's just sadly against the nature of the job and something that needs to be overhauled.
But my point was basically, it's like, do you think Jeremy? They were like 95% or whatever, and I said, right, okay. Do you think Jeremy Corbyn was in that 95%? They said no, and I was like, there you go, that's it, right there. He's not bought. That's why I liked him. And I don't know if I can say the same about Kier Starmer. And it concerns me that he's like, Jeremy Corbyn has still had the whip removed. Like that's so, for me, that's like a symbolic thing that sort of suggests he's maybe not as willing to toe the line that he said he would.
He had his whip removed because of the comments on anti-Semitism, right? He just would. So that to me was, I was a fan of Corbyn until he was so on the fence with regards to Brexit and wouldn't be clear about what his position was. Because that was the thing, as I told you, it was a referendum that got me into it and into politics. And I remember tuning into his interview, Corbyn's interview with, what's his name? The guy, Andrew Neil. And he wouldn't give a bloody position. So all I wanted to hear at the moment was someone, a party anywhere, saying there'll be a second vote or something like that. And the only party offering that was Lib Dems. So I voted for the Lib Dems then, which I can see now wasn't the right thing to do because we needed Labour. But I wasn't clued up then. So I fell out of love with Corbyn then. And also I feel like with the anti-Semitism thing, he just had to acknowledge it in a way that wasn't like he was being stubborn. Yeah. And he didn't. Like, so, and bearing in mind how Kier Starmer and the Labour Party have been absolutely hammered for anti-Semitism, just Corbyn, just fucking swallow your tongue or just say what you need to say to help the party. But it's like he couldn't. And so if I'm Kier Starmer and I'm like, oh my God, I've had enough, I get it. Although I also think, gosh, Kier Starmer, you're also fanning the flames. I think there's so much infighting, and the two. I mean, Tories must look at them and just laugh. The two factions of the Labour Party, like, get your shit together, look at the end goal, and then try and work this out. And I think there's bad players on both sides, by the way. And I just wish they could get past this. But Corbyn's been shit, and he shouldn't have been stubborn. And Starmer should have found another way to reach out to him to say that wasn't on without removing the whip and angering a shitload of Labour Party members. That said, I'm really hoping the membership builds up again as we get closer to election, when they actually start dripping out some of the policies that actually people can get behind. Because at the moment, I mean, now it's starting to happen, but before it was very much like, well, why would I vote for Labour? What do they stand for? They're not even going to, they're saying Brexit's going to work. They're not talking about reinstalling freedom of movement. Like, then they're not talking about nationalising water or energy, all these things that we loved in the pledges. Why am I going to vote for them? So I'm hoping it was a case of cards close to chest. As we get closer to general election, start dripping out these things like we're seeing now, and it's like, oh, okay, that sounds all right.
Do you think it'd be a good idea to reverse Brexit, like, at this point?
I don't think now is the right time to be talking about it. I mean, if we actually took all politics out of it and the media and the frenzy, blah blah blah, it is 100% the right thing to do for the economy, right? We've got Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng talking about we need growth. Brexit is anti-growth. Brexit is putting trade barriers up with our biggest trading bloc on our doorstep. It is hammering our exports by 40%. It is killing, I think, 30% of export businesses to the EU had to close. It's so ridiculous that we've got this paradox going on, and we can't say anything about it though. No, shh, because you can't reverse Brexit. Brexit is the biggest barrier, one of the biggest barriers to growth. So actually, if we were just like, if someone was sensible as empowered it, I don't care what the bloody Daily Mail, I'm going to reverse Brexit tomorrow if the EU will have us, because straight away we will see GDP start to rise, growth start to rise, all the other good things start to happen again. But we can't do that because we've got to play the game and we've got to play media. So I don't think now is the right time to talk about it, sadly, because of those reasons. But I think when the next party comes in, there needs to be sensible discussions about all the damage that Brexit is doing, continuing to do. Bearing in mind, we haven't even unleashed the full extent of Brexit, right? We've still got suspensions on some of the border, what do you call them? The rules and regs and stuff, restrictions, exactly. So I think there needs to be a full and frank conversation once the next party is in power, and then go, we need to revisit this, people. And actually, if there was another referendum, and I hate the idea of another one, but we know that people have gone, yeah, that was a crock of shit, and it's awful.
I'm not convinced that we would vote to go back in.
Really? Oh, 100% am. But even all polling suggests
that. Polling outside of about 6 weeks away from something is just guesses.
Fine, but I think but also no one's really hammering home what Brexit has done.
No.
So if you look at the right-wing press, they're still trying to portray it as a success. Whereas actually, if those discussions were happening with, the leadership was pointing it out, and actually, you had the BBC doing a job of landing it, then I think actually we could be in a much better position.
But I don't think the argument would be solely about the position that we're in. I think that the state of Europe would be a huge talking point, because I think that, right, so like my first book was about Brexit, and I talked a lot about the Cambridge Analytica stuff, the leave, the vote leave, alleged law breaking, the electoral commission stuff, the dark ads on Facebook, the way in which data was harvested, stolen, abused, used. And I didn't want Brexit to happen, I voted Remain. But in the course of writing the book, I do a lot of work on understanding the position of the politicians, and B, the people who were voting for it, and the arguments in favor of voting not the stupid fucking 350 million for the NHS, the actual fundamental, are we better off not being attached to the EU? And I think the EU is going to go through some fucking crazy times in the next 5 to 10 years, if not the next 6 months. Winter is going to get scary. Obviously we're going to be affected by this as well, but I get the feeling that what's happened with the energy markets, there's a lot of sort of more right-wing anti-European people with it being elected across Europe.
Italy recently.
Italy, for example. Although I guarantee none of the people complaining about this woman have ever looked into her ever. And it's hilarious to watch people scream, because I saw a couple of speeches from her and I was like, it's so obvious why people are voting for her. She's like, look, we're going to look after your family. We're going to defend your right to just be you. And we're going to go after these big corporations that have been trying to exploit you and just turn you into consumers and slaves. And I was like, right, this is hyperbolic language, but this is actually exactly what she's tapping into here. And I think it's the same thing that was tapped into in the Brexit vote. It's this rejection of globalization. And I think that people's sort of desire to be more isolated is only going to increase as things get crazier in the world. So this is why I'm not convinced that we would vote to go back in.
I have to agree to disagree there as well.
Well, what do you think I'm wrong about?
I think people are starting to see a real decline in terms of things like the standard of living, and they're seeing industries on their arse. So hospitality, for example, agriculture, horticulture, fishing, all the things that I think they're starting to see. I hope they're starting to see that all the things that were promised, this sort of utopia post-Brexit Britain, you'd go into your GP and it'd be like a spa. You know, and your NHS would be just basically asking you to come in. Like, please do come in. We've got so many appointments. I think people are seeing rising food costs, everything. It's not what it was promised. What was promised.
Yeah.
Even like the queues that they're facing at the airports and Dover and whatever. Loss of freedom of movement, people's retirement plans, stuff is starting to land now, I think. So my hope is that people are seeing the state of the economy, a bit like it'll be a protest vote. I think it's like, oh, we tried that Brexit, it was shit. And I think that's what I'm hoping that people will be waking up to, and not necessarily knowing. People don't know, they're not as close to it as most of us. A few of us are, and they'll just go, actually, that Brexit was a bit shit. Let's go back in again, and maybe not understand all the complexities around it, but just know that we tried it, and everything fell apart. Whether it was all down to Brexit or whether it was down to Ukraine or whatever, I think people will go, yeah, no, it didn't really work out, and actually. Oh, there's all the same amount of immigrants, if not more, and in fact more migrants coming over on dinghies, because it would never have anything to do with that. So, yeah, that's my thinking. I hope.
Yeah, I mean, all of the things you said, I think, are true, but at the same time, I can see the response to them. It's like that people would say none of these things are solely linked to remaining in the European Union. Like none of the things that aside from the immigration side of things, freedom of movement.
What about sewage in our waters?
But the argument would be that we can regulate these things outside of the EU. Like we don't need to be in the EU for our government to make reasonable and safe, protecting like bits of regulation on water, on anything. For me, the argument is. Blaming these things on Brexit ignores the fact that it's the fucking government that are doing it. It's like we could leave the EU and keep all those standards, but we don't, because the government has decided they don't want to, and the people have said, well, to this point at least, they've acquiesced to it at the ballot box. We'll see how long that lasts, but.
It depends on the level of understanding of some people. Like some people will understand that part of the reason that their shopping has gone up is because of Brexit. Their food shop has gone up because of Brexit. Their holidaying abroad has gone up because of Brexit. Basically, I think when people can make the link between what actually is Brexit, example, then their plans to retire abroad, gone, like that's when they will know it's an error. And it might be something as little as, I can't take my dog on holiday as easily as I used to. But I think the people who have been impacted, whether it's, again, the queues or whatever, or airports, they're the ones that have changed their minds. The ones who haven't been impacted will be harder to convince. But again, if you think how close we were, 52-48, what it'll be now, I think, I would bloody hope we'd swing the other way. And if we didn't, oh my God.
Would you accept it? Would you move?
I'm never going to accept it. I'm never going to accept it because it's built on lies. So this is another thing, and it came up today in a tweet about what, again, I think Labour would have to do if they came into power, because I don't think proportional representation is enough. In fact, I think it's, again, great step in the right direction if they do deliver it. But I also think there needs to be an overhaul of party financing, because otherwise we can end up with another Brexit situation. The Electoral Commission needs to be made independent again and given more powers to actually really commensurately punish dodgy and illegal electioneering. Because if you look at the pitiful amounts, things like, I think Vote Leave were, what were they fined something like 60 grand or something, but completely insignificant amount.
I think you're right. I think it was 60,000.
60,000, like the billions that were made from anyway, it's just pointless. And also the other thing I think we need to look at, which is reforming political advertising. So if you look at New Zealand, they regulate lies in politics, and yet in this country you could say anything you want. Like
actually, can we clarify this, because I'd read your thing posting about this the other day, that they're regulating like political advertising. I think it's very difficult to regulate what a politician says in the House of Commons.
This is true.
The advertising, though, was literally 50% of the point of my book. Was literally saying what you're saying now, that we need to, that we regulate all kinds of advertising on television, on radio,
cat food. TV. So my point was, if you make cat food and you make a tin of cat food and you put that on the shelf in Waitrose or wherever, those advertisers, whiskers, are held to a higher standard of truth-telling than our politicians who can put 350 million on the side of a red bus. How is that where we are? So whether it's so the lying in Parliament, that is supposed to be kept in check by the ministerial code of conduct, right? So if you lie in Parliament or mislead, you are breaking the code of conduct. You are supposed to go back and correct the record, the Hansard record. That's not done. So now you can just lie wherever. Also, you've seen some of the literature that comes through your doorstep or arrives on your doorstep, and they just lie. And why wouldn't you? My point is, if you can lie and there are huge rewards and no punishment, the reward being you get to power, why on earth would you stop? Like, so that something needs to be in place. So again, with proportional representation, my concern is you might get someone like, Tyson Fox Reform Party. Is that what it's called?
Lawrence Fox.
Yeah.
Is it Reform UK?
Whatever,
Reform
some
UK.
Party.
So it pisses me off that we were talking about the lack of opposition, like alternatives. Like, it fucks me off that that's the alternative, because he's a prick.
I mean, it's definitely not an alternative. I don't see that.
But I mean that he's a party outside of the established system.
Yeah. My concern is what stops Fox and Tice doing what they do best, putting out absolute bullshit as truth. Richard Tice, who strangely is very charming when you meet him in person, but you can't ignore the fact that he is he was a crucial person in terms of making people believe complete lies. In you look at the Vote Leave video that he came out of his party, and I've quizzed him on this directly. There's no remorse. These people are shameless, and there's no punishment. So because all that could happen is you've got, say for example, Tyson Fox put out another video that's full of this vote for us, you'll get this utopia, and you won't deliver it, but nothing will be there. There's no mechanism there to punish them for doing so. So that's why I feel like we need regs in as well as proportional representation, just to keep things. Yeah.
I mean, for political advertising, you should. Yeah, if things are just not true, then they should be pulled on it. It's the same as advertising for you can't stand up. There's a lot of fuckery that goes on with the way people word things in terms of studies and advertising, and it's 9 out of 10 dentists recommend Colgate, and it's you did 10 surveys, and then the one that had 9 out of 10 dentists is we'll go with that one. There's a lot of fuckery in the way they do it, but they're still held to so much higher a standard.
It's a manipulation of that. It's a massaging of numbers.
Which is why it gets really difficult in some cases, especially when it comes to politics and opinion. It gets really difficult to regulate.
Yeah.
Because then you have to go to someone. It's okay, you are now the arbiter of truth. And they're I've never figured out who can be that person.
So there is the tweet that I put out today. There is a campaign for this. I think they're called advertising reform. Gosh, I should get this. It'll be on my Twitter. But if you can pull it up, that'd be really handy, because I do feel like they need a plug, and you should follow them. They're doing some great work. They've actually got quite far in Parliament with this. So this would be a cross-party. The people that would decide whether something was a breach of political advertising standards would be cross-party. So it'd be from all of the different parties, as well as industry professionals. So outside of politics, you've got the Advertising Standards Authority, and you've got other bodies who are independent, who regulate. So that's how you do it. That's how they would come to some form of consensus.
It's called Reform Political Advertising.
Reform Political Advertising. Go and follow them. They're doing some great work, and they are making headway.
Yeah.
And I think that changes everything again. So you can't, because Peter Oborne touches upon this in his book, The Assault on Truth. He says when a politician lies to you, and you vote for them based on that lie that you think is a truth, they are stealing your vote from you, stealing it. And they're stealing you of the opportunity for true democracy. And I don't think people get this. I don't think people are angry enough about this. They voted for something, and then they didn't get it. We just seem to be okay, fair enough. They're all the same.
The conclusion that I had drawn from a lot of research about this was that the voters and the politicians were on 1,000,000,000% different pages about what Brexit meant. And I'm not convinced that many people were swung by lies that they saw, as were rejecting or just voting based on something that seemed to be what Brexit would represent, but like no one ever promised it, in terms of like, yeah, okay, right, we're going to look after British farmers, and we're going to, like, instead of having our supply chain monstrously outsourced the whole way to China and back, which is horrendous for the environment. People should realize that isolationism is also green.
Yeah, I mean,
but like, yeah,
we're also not self-sufficient as a country. So
no. But we had this.
That's lovely. We can't do that.
But yeah, so like my point would be that like the implication of the way that the politicians spoke was that they were hearkening back to a time that maybe never actually existed, but one in which Britain could be more self-sufficient.
Of course, we rule Britannia.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. And that is never what the politicians were truly saying. Okay, so there were some of them be like, oh, we'll look after the fishermen, forage, for example. But like most of the time they weren't talking, they were saying, you know, we're going to be free trade Britain, we're going to globally trade, we're going to, you know, have all these trade agreements. Like that's what they were saying. And I don't think anyone was like, actually, yeah, that's going to be great. Like I don't think any of the voters were all about globalization.
No,
they were the complete opposite.
I think, look, everyone, that's again the thing. So people voted for Brexit for so many different reasons. There was, and also no one voted for the same Brexit. There were so many different, I mean, you've got it now. No one's agreed on what Brexit actually means. You've got Brexiteers who are all arguing with each other, saying it's not hard enough, it's not this enough, it should have been no deal, it should have been a soft deal, there should have been no out of the single market and customs union, we should have been more closely aligned. There was no single version of Brexit. So the idea that anyone knew what the hell they were voting for, there were all sorts of reasons people voted. Sometimes it was just a protest vote. They didn't like David Cameron. So the whole thing was a complete shit show. Should never have been boiled down to one simple question. And I will never forgive Cameron for that. In fact, I was behind him at a game at Wembley. And he was with his son. Otherwise, I would have just said, "Oh, you fucker." But I didn't. I refrained.
You could have passed him a note. You should always have a pen and paper on hand just in case.
I did, honestly. I felt like there was a burning. I was like, you bastard. And then also when he tweets. And I'm just like, if you fucked up so royally. Sorry, my swearing has just intensified in the last 10 seconds.
That's fine.
This is again the thing with this government as well. If I make a mistake at work, I feel a bit like, you know, oh God, I feel a bit embarrassed, or, you know, hold my hands up, I'm really sorry, that was me, shit, I'll make, you know. These people got no shame whatsoever. They still, like David Frost, still wheeled out as these experts. Daniel Hannan, like, what? You are responsible for one of the biggest catastrophes in this country. And
so far
still have, yeah, I know, on downward trajectory. And you still have the brass neck to be peddled out and as some kind of expert. You've been wrong on everything. I don't know where they get this confidence from. Maybe it's a private school thing. I'm not sure. I only went to a local comprehensive, so I'm a bit like, sorry, that was me. But yeah, I wish I had their. No, I don't actually. I don't wish I had their whatever it is, bullshittery, conviction, misplaced confidence.
I'm not sure what word I would use.
Arrogance.
I don't know if it's arrogance. Entitlement.
Yeah, there's that as well.
Which is probably more what it is.
And that's the thing as well. Why do these entitled people end up governing us? It's just so broken. I just think we need more people that are straight talking and without agendas. And I think that's part of the reason that the people. But I've got a following. I'm not sponsored. This is not my main job. I have a full-time job. Yes, I make the odd bit of money out of a Jeremy Vine appearance. It's not enough to pay our spiraling energy bills. Like, you know, I do this.
I do enjoy your righteous indignation whenever you end up on that show, because they tend to put you with just the stupidest people that I have ever seen.
Glad you said that. But yeah, it's really hard, and sometimes I'm for
that's how I came across you first. Was a Jeremy Vine clip, and you were just there being like, I don't even know where to start. Like. Yeah. Thank you.
Sometimes I've got the energy for it, and more recently, I find it really difficult now, because I think we're at a point now where if you are still peddling this nonsense, like, you know, people saying fracking is the answer, when it clearly, by everyone that knows anything about it, knows it's bloody not. It will change nothing. It's just going to make really rich people even richer, and it's going to hurt the environment. Or, you know, they're still peddling this, you know, that this is these tax cuts will be a good thing, or Boris Johnson actually was a really good prime minister. No, I'm not having it anymore. You've had your moment. I'm not listening to your bullshit anymore. And also substantiate stuff. And I find so many of these right-wing gobs, they just rehash headlines that you read, or stories that you'll read in the whatever, in the Telegraph, in the Daily Mail, in the Sun, and there's no The Express even, God help us, and there is no thinking behind it. And that's what I've noticed as well. I used to think everyone on the TV, this is all new to me, by the way, I never used to do this sort of stuff. This is within 2 years all this stuff happened to me. But I used to just think everyone on TV, on these panel shows, on BBC, they knew their shit. They were experts, and I should trust them. I used to look at people in Parliament and be like, there's so much
distinguished, intelligent
there's
guy.
So much more cleverer than me. There's so much more intelligent than me. They must know. I must be deferential to them. And also because I was my working class family, I went to UCL. I got into UCL, which is like top London university. And I quit after a few months, and I ended up going to Portsmouth University, which I might have much better time at. And I felt completely out of my depth, because I was like, all these people are better than me, because they had these posh accents and they had the latest Louis Vuitton, and they went skiing and all this sort of stuff. And I ended up bowing out, because back then I just felt out of place. I couldn't compete. They were so much better than me. That's how I felt about our politicians. I just thought they are a better caliber of person than me, because they just have been born into that, you know. And only now I realise they aren't. And in fact, you have to work, when you're a working class person or whatever, I think you have to work doubly, triply hard to get anywhere near those positions and to be treated credibly, because I don't have a posh accent, I don't speak like that, whereas, you know, Jacob Rees-Mogg can talk out any old shit, and the rest of us are so deferential in this country, which brings us to the monarchy argument, which I'm not going to go into now, that we just go, well, he must know what he's talking about, because he sounds all posh, he's all clever and probably rich. And that, again, is part of the problem. Like Angela Rayner, I think, talks a lot of sense. And so does, who's the other one who's got the accent, the woman? I love her. She does all the work for like women's rights and stuff like that. I've forgotten her name. Jess Phillips.
Jess Phillips. Yeah.
Right. I think these are two women that speak so much sense. And if they were...
I'm not a fan of Jess Phillips.
You know... Okay. She was.
I feel she always says the thing sometimes she says the right thing at the right time, or half the time she's on the wrong side of the argument and then pretends like she wasn't. And it seems like she's very, very pally with Rupert Murdoch. And I
know she's pally with Rees-Mogg, which is a weird one, but there is something in this, right? Okay. I have got friends that are Tory voters. And I've got friends that have voted Brexit. I'd like to think they probably wouldn't now. But there is, like, you know, the American judge that died, the Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She was obviously a champion for all good things, basically, all rights, women's rights, and whatever. She did amazing work. She changed the world for the better. She was very close to a very far, like a right Supreme Court judge. They were pally. And I don't think, like, sometimes, I know it sounds weird, but you can actually separate the two. Like, you can.
I don't judge people for the opinions they have. I judge them for how they conduct themselves.
Yeah. And I do find now more and more, if you are right leaning, I find it difficult to be your friend, but we can, if we've got a history between us or whatever, let's just not talk about it. Or I will try to, you know, bring you up to speed or whatever, but, you know, it's fine.
Okay. Because we said we would talk about this. So this is a great segue.
Okay.
Like, there is this, like, stratification of opinion that seems to me, like, whenever I see the headline, like, right-wing person or right-wing politician or elected says this, to me, the words right-wing coming out of the mouths or on the pages of a certain portion of the press or the population is intended as, like, to say that's what they believe is like an insult in itself. Like, that is a bad thing. That's the tone that I see in this. Like, do you feel like that is the case? Like, is to say someone is just like, I don't know, a traditionalist, a bit conservative, like, and I don't mean conservative in this like bastardized, ridiculous, like conservative government that we have. They're not. They're in absolutely no way what like people who are like traditionally right wing like would like most of the time. Some of the free marketeers maybe, but do you see it as bad for someone to be right wing?
So this is the thing. I think our discourse now is so binary. Like I didn't even realize I was a lefty. Like I've tweeted, I just thought I wasn't a dickhead. I just thought I wasn't a selfish dickhead.
Why do you is that how you view anyone that would consider themselves on the right?
So if you say right, so I do refer to, I'm guilty of this, I refer to like the papers as right-wing rags, like the ones like the Express, the Sun, the Daily Mail, the Telegraph, and I do view them that way because they peddle every single one of what I call the right-wing ideologies, whether that's free market or rampant free market, like libertarianism. Is that the word? Yeah.
Well,
Anyway, that right through to being really anti-immigrant, right through to being like anti-abortion, all these things sit within the right-wing sphere of thinking. So actually, if you are just a person who actually I just want to keep more of my money, I want low taxes, that puts you in the right of centre, but it doesn't put you right over there with the people that don't want to pay any taxes and want to privatise the NHS. And so there's it's a spectrum, isn't it? So I think we need to be really careful about going, you're on the right, you're a racist. I think that's really divisive and shit. And I see it a lot in a lot of the Twitter sort of dialogue. From people on the left using this as an attack, and I don't think it helps anyone.
Helps nobody.
Like, just doesn't help the conversation. Also, as much as it's tricky sometimes, try and understand where people are coming from. Only and then can you try and unpick or help them or speak to them and understand why it is they're voting that way, and maybe show them all the other stuff that happens as a result of doing that, which is really bad for the rest of the economy or the rest of people, whatever. But I think this really binary discourse that we're having, lefties, Marxists, righties, racists, is so unhelpful. But again, it's done by design. And we have got a government, and this is what I find nuts as well. You've got PM, both Truss and Johnson, and cabinet ministers, senior cabinet ministers, who use that division to further their agenda. How many times have you heard lefty lawyers or the lefty, lefty press or lefty, always, do-gooders? Blimey, who doesn't want to be a do-gooder? Who wants to be a do-gooder? Like, that's just divisive. And also, I don't understand how you can be a PM and know that actually a lot of the country is left-leaning. If you look at voting since the Second World War, we've always been a majority that have voted for left-leaning companies. Sadly, because of first past the post, we don't rarely get a left-leaning party in power. But how can you, as a PM, have the gall to stand up and just basically go to more than half of the population who would consider them on the left? Like, it's really divisive, and I don't think we should be talking like that. But yes, I do refer to right wing. If I talk about someone being right wing, it'll be papers that pursue the entire ideology. You've got everything from the free market stuff to the racism stuff, and the same with people. Whereas if you're slightly on the right because you're just taxes, I wouldn't put you in that bracket.
Well, it's like, right, so like for example, say there's someone who genuinely believes that privatization is the way forwards in a lot of things. It's like they can sit down and be like, I believe the NHS should be privatized. They can like point at, say, Germany, right? And say, hey, look, Germany, very good healthcare system, completely privatized, heavily regulated, but privatized. And that works just, if not at the minute, better than the NHS. I don't think that most of the time that idea is coming out of a, oh, let's just make loads of money thing. It's coming from a, well, we just want the best healthcare. It's the same when it comes to like immigration. I find that like the actual portion of people who want immigration restricted that are actually racist is so tiny compared to the portion who are like, hang on, like we got like, I can't get XYZ services and we're not investing in it. And it's like I want to protect myself, my family, my community first. I don't feel like it's not out of, I don't think any of the that argument is like based in race, I think they wouldn't. I don't think people would give a fuck if it was like someone from fucking Scotland. If they they saw the same dynamic, they would be like, hey, we want to protect.
But Josh,
our
we
family.
we don't talk sensibly like that. We talk in extreme. We talk in extremes. Why do we talk in extremes? Because we've become like a clickbait. We only react to extremes. There's no middle ground. There's no negotiation. There's no compromising now. You've just got a government with an 80-seat majority that railroads anything it wants to do now. So there's no talking in the middle, because actually I think you'll bang on. I think there's one of the Scandinavian countries where they have their water is privatized, but it works because it's so heavily regulated. The government insists on a level of reinvestment back into the infrastructure, and it's all about driving customer value for the end consumer, the public.
Yeah.
But we don't have that here. It's the Wild West, and it's all about driving value for the shareholder, which is why we've seen all of these massive sewage spills and all the pipes are broken and whatever. So
they
you're absolutely right.
They also can't get the chemicals to treat it due to Brexit.
Partly due to Brexit, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I do think there, again, I think there's no trust. So if we were to privatise the NHS now, if that conversation is coming up now, everyone's going to go no, because we don't trust. We don't trust that the government would do it in
a way that's not simply to line their own pockets.
Absolutely. Yeah. Exactly. So that's it. And you know, if the NHS becomes privatised and it looks like it's going that way by stealth, because the shell of the car
looks like it is. Like I've explored this extensively.
But they're doing it very cleverly. It's like someone saying like the shell of the car. I've heard it. I can't credit someone. I don't know who's did it, but the shell of the car is it's not privatised. It's nationalised. But all of the bits under the bonnet, the seats, the seat belts, the engine, or whatever, that is all being privatised underneath.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, it's gone.
Salami tactics.
Exactly. It's a bit like your teeth, right? A bit like your teeth. So you want to see a dentist. What's happened there? You basically you're waiting months. I had to wait months for an NHS dentist appointment because my little one had his first dentist appointment. But that's the same thing. It's by stealth. Eventually, you just have to go private, and that's what we're starting to see now, where people are going, it's a bloody 8-month waiting list. I can't wait that long. Or
my mum's in the same boat at the minute.
Yeah, my dad had this thing, and your parents get sick, and you're like, oh my god, you panic, and there was a waiting list for him to go and see someone, and me and my brother and my sister were like, we can't wait this long. If it's something bad, you don't want it to develop or whatever, and so we just went together and paid for him to go private. But that's what's happening. A two-tier system's emerging because, again, is this by design? But we can't have those conversations about privatisation, because if the Tories did it, we would end up, with the American-style healthcare system where someone's having what you think is a heart attack and you have to think twice about calling an ambulance, because if it's not, you're going to be spunking 1,200 quid or something on an ambulance.
It's cute that you think it's just 1,200.
How much is it?
It could be tens of thousands.
Jesus.
Because you're getting paid. You pay for the ambulance, and then you pay for the arrival. You pay for every tiny little thing that you use. Yeah, it's still about four grand. I saw a bill for recently in my real job. I've been looking at this. Yeah,
I don't think and again, this needs to be something that a credible opposition would be doing. Land this point at the moment. You get this, you go into the hospital, you walk out, there is no bill. Imagine the stress, like some people have lost children, for example. They're dealing with the loss of a loved one. They're dealing with that. And then a bill arrives. Can you imagine that bankrupts them? Do you want to see how many bankruptcies there are in the US?
650,000 a year.
Thank you, Josh. I mean, people don't understand this, and when the NHS is gone, it's gone.
Yeah. Yes, that is. It is a concerning trend that it's concerning that the people who should be smart enough to see what's happening don't.
My brother is loving to bits. He does very well. In fact, he's done very well out of the tax cuts for the higher wealth individuals. But he can't see what the impact of this is on anyone else. And he mentioned about, is it such a bad idea if the NHS is privatised? Because people just get private health insurance. I'm like, oh God. I'm like, how is he?
He's right, but that's going to be horrendously costly.
Also, he's forgotten really quickly. We're from we had the same upbringing. quite deprived, you know, and I think he's really quickly forgotten what happened. And mum and dad would not have been able to fork out a few £100, whatever, every single month for our private healthcare. And he's like, most people get it with their work. I'm like, no, they bloody don't.
Oh, in America, they do. 156 million people get it through their job. But do you want to explain to him why that's the fucking dumbest thing on the planet?
Tell me so I can pass it on.
Because, do you know what that does? That links your ability to get looked after to the fact that you have this job. Any interim period where you go, you know, I'm going to quit my job.
Yeah.
I'm going to figure out what I want to do next. No healthcare.
Yeah.
It ties people to jobs that they hate solely for the reason of remaining healthy. That is if he is like a free marketeer in any way, shape or form and believes in people's freedom, and that is the thing that's going to unlock the economy, that is the stupidest fucking thing on the planet.
I'll pass that on. Thank you, Dan.
I've had too many of these arguments, you know.
You know. But then I also think he doesn't understand the cost of what that insurance policy would be in between jobs. If you did decide, actually, I'm going to jack in this job and I'm going to spend some time thinking about what else I want to do. Or he would think, like I would probably think there is, I don't think I've ever had a period where I've not gone job to job. Yeah, I've never had a period apart from when I was made redundant at one point, and I had some money to, you know, redundancy pay. So I've always gone job to job to job to job because I've always been hand to mouth basically. So maybe that'd be his thinking as well. I don't know.
Wow.
Doesn't get it.
Yeah. I mean, so like you've alluded several times to this idea that like the things, say the political discourse, the way in which our media environment operates, the way in which we're sort of steered away from a lot of the, you know, huge theft that is currently, you know, going on in British politics. Like, to what extent, like when you say it's by design, like what extent do you think that there is like a very powerful group of people who have the ability to at least pull some strings and, like, you know, do their puppet master jazz, and like what extent do you think that's the case?
A massive extent. I think if you look at,
to sound like a conspiracy theorist.
but this is the problem. I hate this, and
That's fine. That's half my guess.
And this is, but do you not agree?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree.
But this is what makes talking about politics so difficult now, because it's not something you can have a quick chat about to someone. It is so huge, and it requires a lot of headspace to get it. Like, I don't know if you read any of the bylines, so Yorkshire Bylines, Byline Times. They've done some incredible investigative journalism on this recently. BBC, welcome to the party, about like, you know, 5 years too late. You've got this whole group, and it's such a lot to get your head around. And this is by design. So people go, oh, I don't know, chuck on Coronation Street. It's too much. It's too much. But this is what is happening, right? Just to surmise. There is a group at this address in Westminster, I think, called, it's a Tufton Street address,
55
right?
Tufton
55 Tufton Street. You might, you know, there are all these think tanks. You might hear about think tanks, and they've got these lovely names that sound like they're very clever.
The Institute for Economic Affairs,
Economic
the
Affairs,
Taxpayers Alliance,
who's blocked me on Twitter.
Oh, that's hilarious.
There's loads of them, right? And they're basically these groups that masquerade as, like, you know, groups that are out there concerned for the public. The Taxpayers Alliance, that sounds like, that's for me. They're looking out for my money as a taxpayer. Well, they're not.
Most of them have charitable status as well. Don't pay any tax.
And many of them are very opaquely funded, should we put it that way. Why would they hide who funds them? Well, this is what's being exposed now, and BBC are costing onto it. A large majority of them are being funded by fossil fuel companies, climate change denial, you know, companies like that, people who are linked to very far right extremist groups. And what's happened now, which is the really scary thing, is they are very closely linked to the ERG. So the ERG actually find themselves as members of these groups. So people like Suella Braverman and Therese Coffey and Jacob Rees-Mogg, Liz Truss, whatever.
They'll go to all their cocktail parties. They'll take all their policy papers from them.
What this means, Liz Truss is new economic advisor, for goodness sake. Some of the lords, Lord, is it Spencer? Basically, there are so many people within our government, within our politics, influential politicians now, who are from these groups. And these groups do not exist to benefit you and I or the average. They are working for a very small number. They get privately funded, like opaquely funded, that we can't see, by these multi billionaires who make shitloads of money from industries like fossil fuels, which is why we're seeing now the lift on fracking, even though there's absolutely no reason to do that whatsoever. Why we're seeing lifts on the caps on bankers' bonuses.
The issues that people care about.
Exactly. They are working. Government is now working for those think tanks, being advised by those think tanks that work for that tiny portion of billionaires. And it sounds conspiracy theorist because it's awful, and you're like, no. But it's where we are.
Yeah, the idea goes from billionaire or multi-billion-dollar transnational company to the think tanks, who then decide, who write some nice policy papers about why the position that they would like to happen, like free ports, would be a great idea. Then all of a sudden, they put out a few policy papers, then that gets touted by a couple of politicians. All of a sudden, it finds its way into Boris Johnson's manifesto, and then, hey presto, it's gone straight from the minds of the billionaires into the fucking laws of the United Kingdom.
Yeah, and also I think people don't just put yourselves, if you can, in the shoes, in the moccasin, Gucci, whatever they are, gold-plated shoes of a billionaire who owns BP, right? He doesn't want governments to stop relying on fossil fuels. He wants us to continue this reliance as long as we can. He doesn't want any rationing. He doesn't want, because that's where he makes his money, like ridiculous profits. So what does he do? He puts money into a think tank, a group that then has access to government and bankrolls the government. And because look at the Tory party. Look how much money the Tory party have received from fossil fuels. From fossil fuel companies. So I think it was like something, I don't know, millions since Boris Johnson's election alone. This is what they do. They're buying policy. They're not donating. They're not donating to the Tory party out of the goodness of their heart. They want a return on investment. And this is exactly what they're getting.
And then the politicians are very happy to do very little about actually upgrading our energy grid and, maybe transition into more stable, less volatile, less reliant on horrible dictators' forms of power, because they love the political football that they get to batter around. It's like, oh no, we'll save the environment. Like, no, we'll save the environment, whilst doing fucking nothing about it.
I know.
Do you see? If we had, this makes me so angry. If we actually had, you go back 10 years, right, when the Conservative Party were claiming they were going to be the greenest government ever, if they'd actually done literally fucking anything about it, we would be not beholden to Russia at all. We would be sat here not giving two fucks about what was going on in Ukraine, because we would be fine, right? We wouldn't well, not that I actually think that the energy prices are linked to fucking Ukraine basically at all, but we would be sat here we wouldn't be able to point out, well, it's because of Ukraine, the gas.
We were on course. There's some really interesting graphs doing the rounds. We were on course to be almost like 100% entirely sustainable from renewables, and the fact that there was an insulation plan as well that dropped off a cliff.
Insulation plan went gone. There was a load of plans to give solar panels and wind farms, build them like shit, and this
and also a gas storage facility.
And the grid, this is the big one that I never got. I spoke to a couple of electricians about it. I was like, why don't we just give everyone solar panels? They were like, the grid can't handle it. We need to make monstrous upgrades to our electrical grid. You ever heard a politician saying that we have to do that? No, you haven't.
No. Again, it's by design. There's no who's going to get rich from that. It's not the pals of the Conservative Party. It's not the Tory donors. Just like Dean Dorries put it out, it's the donors we need to please. And they're so transparent about it, and they're so brazen. But there is no mechanism in place for us to do a thing about it. All we've got is our vote. That's it. Riots aren't happening. Don't know why. I'd be there in a heartbeat.
I'm there. I was ready. I was like, right, we're going protesting for this energy shit. And then she decided that as a solution, she would just take $100 billion of taxpayer money, add to our already wonderful inflation crisis by putting more money on the fucking debt books without building anything, and just hand it straight to the energy companies. Oh, it's fine. That'll be fine.
Again, what do you expect for someone who is in the pockets of the energy companies who used to work for Shell?
Yeah, I was about to say.
It's in such a bad place. I'm going to come away from this today. And I love having a chat about this because it's not something I can talk to about my friends and stuff. So it's a bit like therapy. But honestly, it feels...
Right, well then let's find some positivity.
Mentally exhausting, just because I really care. I really do care. At 4 a.m. the other night, I was reading those articles from Byline. and I'm just like despairing, and I feel utterly powerless, like I feel so many people do. So it's tough this. Sometimes I wish I didn't know. Sometimes I wish I'd go back to pre-2016 where all I cared about was, you know, The Apprentice or whatever. I don't know, just little things.
Gotta get a little stoicism in your life.
Basically, yeah.
It's basically the 12-step program without religion. It's like accept the things you can't control, control the things you can.
Yeah, but at the moment I feel like I can't control anything.
Well,
nothing to do with our politics.
No,
Utterly powerless, and lots of.
But I mean, the argument actually that gets made in this realm is like are you familiar with the like Jordan Peterson trope, like the clean your room thing? He's like, someone asks him like how to, you know, basically what you're saying, like there's all these like crazy spiraling things that are out of my control. Like what the fuck? Like what am I meant to do if I'm 25 and I had no idea, no control over where the future's going and everything? Like he kind of like sneers a bit when he says this. Sometimes it's like, oh yeah, you know, clean your room. He's like, that's not a joke. Like if you start and like the point is like start and sort out your world, like fucking get your house in order, sort yourself out, and like the ripples of positivity that like go out from like you sorting yourself out and then helping others to sort themselves out, like the ripples outwards, like there's no one can tell you the bounds of possibility if everyone in the country just like suddenly slowly this is what I thought was going to happen during the pandemic, how naive, but I thought that like maybe we'd have some time to reflect, you know, all, you know, become slightly less venomous online, maybe like, I don't know, just try and be. Yeah, I was very
everyone just became drunks, didn't they, and put on weight.
Well, yeah, I mean that was fun too. Yeah. But no, he was like, the point is that basically like, you know, make your world a little better and you'd be surprised how fast that can ripple out. And I quite like that message, and it at least keeps me positive in the hope that, you know,
there is that, but it doesn't stop all of it. You know about all this going on.
Yeah.
And the problem I've got, Josh, is that, and many will have, is it's not getting better.
No.
Many people now, it used to be just the poor that would be like they're getting shafted, and now we've got people who are on like, you know, really decent incomes. I've got a friend of mine who is losing sleep because of the impact that the rising interest rates are going to have on his mortgage repayments. And then the knock-on effect that's going to have on things like renters. He earns a decent salary. He's got 2 kids, but he doesn't have an extra 400-500 quid to put towards the mortgage every month, let alone the extra 25% jump in energy bills. Even though with the cap, it's still going to be 25%. By the way, this is coming next month, and this is why I can't. Maybe I just wish I didn't care as much, if I'm honest, because I do. It really bothers me. Like, I don't want to see people struggling when they shouldn't be. They're working their bollocks off, and that's why I can't switch off, even if I do tidy my bedroom. My bedroom's never tidy because my husband's messy. So I
wish I had a husband to blame. Anyway, I've taken up a lot of your time. We've smashed past an hour.
Oh, have we? I didn't feel like it.
Well, that's good. Time flies when you're having fun or ranting. But yeah, do you want to like point people towards your stuff?
Yeah, so basically, I'm not normally this miserable. Sorry. I think you just caught me on a day when everything is just feeling like it's falling, you know, just falling apart. But yeah, if you want to catch more of basically political ramblings, but they're very humorous as well. I've got a podcast called The Trawl, and it's with the amazing Gemma Forte, and she's the one that brings the lightness. She's very funny. I'm more like bring a lot of the facts and the hard truths. But The Trawl, search for it on all your normal podcast platforms or on my Twitter, which is at Marina Purkiss. And what we try and do is just go through all the political shit that's going, try and make sense of it, pull in some extra data points. Someone actually left a review saying, love this podcast because it makes me think and it makes me piss myself. So I think that's a nice little summary. If that's the sort of thing you're after, have a look at our podcast, The Trawl. Wonderful. Well, I'll put the link in the description. Thank you, Josh. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me. No problem. Thanks for making it all the way to the end of the video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment for us in the comments below. Let me know what you thought and if you'd like to see more of this from the show. Thank you, and we'll see you again next time.